Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia channel. The book that this program interprets for you is called Thinking, Fast and Slow. The author of this book, Daniel Kahneman, was the winner of the 2002 Nobel Prize in Economics for pioneering a new branch of economics, behavioral economics. This Thinking, Fast and Slow is the classic work of behavioral economics. The book reveals why our brains are so prone to make mistakes. Why do we have irrational thoughts? Is there any way to improve the accuracy of our thinking? Help us make accurate judgments and decisions. After watching this video, you can get the answer from it. What is behavioral economics? We will talk about it later. Let me talk about a more legendary place about Daniel Kahneman. He is not an economist, but a psychologist. You may wonder why a psychologist can win the Nobel Prize in economics? That's what makes him great. He took the lead in combining psychological theory, psychological experiments, and economic research to solve a huge problem in traditional economics. There is a problem with the foundation of the traditional economic building. At that time, economics research had a basic premise called the rational man hypothesis, which assumed that in economic activities, people would make rational choices in order to maximize their own interests. At that time, all deduction in economics was based on the rational man assumption. However, economists have found that in the real world, people actually behave differently from this assumption. There is an example in the book. An economist invited his friend to play a coin toss game. If he wins, he can get $200, but if he loses, he will lose $100. If we analyze it according to the rational person hypothesis, the probability of winning or losing is the same, the money you lose is less, and the money you win is more, so it is worth participating. But the economist friend said that he would not accept it, because he felt that the satisfaction of gaining $200 could not offset the pain of losing $100. You see, in reality, when we think about problems, we don't completely start from the pursuit of maximizing profits, as economists imagine. The process of human beings making choices is far more complicated than economists imagined. The previous example shows that, in many cases, people's fear of risks is much more important than benefits. The rational person assumption of traditional economics is flawed, and people's behavior and decision-making based on this may vary widely. As a result, Kahneman created a new branch of economics, behavioral economics, which combines psychological theory and economic analysis to study people's behavior, emotion, psychology, etc. How do these factors that traditional economics pay less attention to? It affects the economic decision-making of individuals and groups, and then affects the operation of economic organizations and economic systems. In this book, based on his years of research, Kahneman shows us how we think when human beings make judgments and decisions. What are the defects of this innate way of thinking? How can we make up for these shortcomings? The significance of this book is that it proposes the feature of thinking bias. It reminds us how error-prone the human brain is, and what patterns these errors have in common. This knowledge is especially important for people in the 21st century, because now is the first time in human history that so many people are engaged in work related to numbers and rational decision-making. You can use this book as a working manual for the mind and a guide to improving the accuracy of thinking. Next, we will interpret this book for you in two parts. The first part, how do we make judgments and decisions? The second part, is there any way to improve the accuracy of our thinking? First part. How do we make judgments and decisions? The answer is actually hidden in the title of this book, Thinking, Fast and Slow. Kahneman divided the human thinking mode into two systems, System 1 and System 2. We can also call them the fast system and the slow system. You can first imagine such a scene, assuming that there is a car coming towards you. What is your first reaction? Did he just dodge to the side unconsciously? Then change the question again. Please do the math. How much is 17 multiplied by 24? Are you unable to give me an answer right away? This is where the fast and slow systems come into play. When you unconsciously decide to get out of the way, we mobilize the fast system, and when you multiply 17 by 24, you need to mobilize the slow system. The fast system and the slow system have their own strengths. Reading other people's expressions, listening to other people's tone of voice, seeing the distance of things, and identifying dangers around them are all good at the fast system. However, such as math problems, logic problems, finding a proper wording, comparing two mobile phones which has better performance, these are what the slow system is good at. Simply put, the fast system is more inclined to use intuitive judgment, and the slow system is more inclined to use rational judgment. Everyone's thinking process is actually the result of the cooperation between the fast system and the slow system. The two systems have a clear division of labor. Another feature of their cooperation is that the fast system is often in an automatic state, while the slow system is in a relaxed state. Only when the fast system encounters problems that cannot be solved will it ask the slow system for help. For example, for the question of multiplying 17 by 24 just mentioned, the fast system cannot give an answer, and the slow system will be activated at this time. There is another situation where the slow system is also activated, which is when things are not intuitive and violate our common sense. For example, there will be no red rain in the sky, and the orangutans in the zoo will not suddenly run into the street. This is what Kahneman said: when intuition is in trouble, reason will come forward to solve it. For another example, if you drive from home to work, you have walked that section of the road many times. You know which intersection has traffic lights, when to stop, and which intersection has to turn and turn on the turn signal. You can make a judgment immediately without thinking too much. This is the fast system helping you make decisions. However, one day you are going to another company to visit customers. You have never been there before. When you arrive at an unfamiliar intersection, you will often consciously slow down the speed of the car, check the navigation again, and carefully read the information on the street signs. Judge again. At this time, the slow system is helping you make decisions. So why does our brain use such a mechanism? Since the slow system is more accurate, why not hand over all the problems to the slow system, but instead have an extra fast system that is not so accurate? There are two reasons for this: a practical reason and a historical reason left by human evolution. The practical reason is that slow systems take up too much of our attention. You can think of our brain as a computer. A slow system is a program that is powerful but consumes memory. Once it is running, other programs cannot be run. When we turn on the slow system to think about problems, we ignore other information around us. An example is given in the book. Some psychologists did an experiment. They took a short film in which players from two teams wearing white jerseys and black jerseys were passing the ball. The psychologist gathered a group of spectators and asked them to count the number of passes made by the white team while completely ignoring the passes made by the black team. It's a job that requires full commitment, in other words, a job that requires a very slow system. Psychologists have a design in the short film. In addition to the athletes wearing white and black jerseys, they also arranged for a person who disguised himself as a gorilla. This gorilla walked through the crowd and beat his own face to the camera chest. He was on camera for 9 seconds. Surprisingly, half of the audience was so engrossed in watching this short film that they didn't even notice a gorilla appeared in the crowd. You see, when a slow system starts working, it takes a lot of attention. If we give all the work to the slow system, it will be difficult to have extra attention to take care of other things. The author uses a metaphor in the book. A slow system is like a high-power electrical appliance. If it is kept on, the overload of electricity will cause it to trip. There is also a historical reason for the division of labor between the fast system and the slow system. From the perspective of human evolution, many of our seemingly irrational thinking today are precisely the reasons why our ancestors survived. What they are facing is the challenge of nature. They may be walking and a tiger jumps out in front of them. They must make a quick decision, either fight it or run away. If you say you want to stop and think about it, measure risks, calculate probabilities, and then make a decision, you will already be a tiger's meal. So, for our ancestors, relying on the fast system, that is, making decisions with intuition, although this method is not precise, it can improve our probability of survival. In the face of that dangerous environment, precision can only give way to speed. If we look at it from an evolutionary perspective, we can understand some of the irrational behaviors of humans today. Like overconfidence. A psychologist once conducted a survey. They found a group of people who could drive and asked them, what do you think of their driving skills? If there are two categories, are you the one with a higher level or the one with a lower level? What do you think it turned out? 80% of drivers consider themselves above average. This type of research first started in 1976 with a survey of 1 million high school students by American educators. The study found that 70% of students rated themselves as above average leaders, 60% rated themselves as above average athletic, and 85% rated themselves above average in their ability to get along with others. Among these people, 25% consider themselves the top 1%. A University of Washington survey of college students found similar results, with 89% identifying themselves as more positive than most. Most people think of themselves as just richer and of better character than other people. Why do we have such irrational thoughts? Because from an evolutionary point of view, overconfidence is not necessarily harmful, and it is even useful to us in many cases. Suppose we are primitive people now, walking in the mountains and forests. At this time, we saw a deer running past our eyes, and this deer ran very fast. I am a relatively rational person. After some calculations, I think the probability of me catching this deer is 1%, which is extremely low. And you are completely different from me. You are an overconfident person. You think you have a 50% chance of chasing it, and you chase it out immediately. But, you pay attention, the mind can affect our body. Even if we have similar abilities, if you believe that you can catch the deer, you may secrete more dopamine, and you will try harder to chase the deer. Therefore, the probability of you catching this deer in the end may increase. You catch the deer and you eat the meat, and I might starve to death. You see, overconfidence makes your chances of survival higher. After tens of thousands of years of selection by nature, our ancestors, who ran out to chase deer, survived, and then left this trait in our genes. Because of the characteristics of our brains and the environment in which our ancestors lived, human beings cannot entrust all their thinking to the slow system. Trouble, and then leave the problem to the slow system to solve. Under normal circumstances, there is nothing wrong with this division of labor in our brains, which can help us deal with various things efficiently. When we mobilize the slow system, we need to mobilize more brain resources when we think rationally, so we use it less, which saves us energy. But this division of labor also has a potential problem, which we may not realize at all, that is, the fast system runs too fast, and it often gives the answer before the slow system. It's like a joke. A job seeker goes to a company for an interview, and the interviewer asks if you have any specialties. Job applicants say that I do mental calculations very quickly. The interviewer said, then do you calculate what is 37 multiplied by 25? The job seeker blurted out, equal to 900. The interviewer pressed the calculator and said that your calculation is wrong. The job seeker said, don't care if I'm right or not, just say I'm fast. Even well-educated people can easily make mistakes because of the fast system. There is a test question in the book. A racket and a ball are worth $1.1 in total, and the racket is $1 more expensive than the ball. Ask, how much is the ball worth? You could very well blurt out that the ball is worth 10 cents. In fact, slow down a little and do the math, and you will find that the racket should be worth $1.05 and the ball should be worth 5 cents. It doesn't matter if you get the wrong answer. Even top students from Harvard University, MIT, and Princeton University gave more than 50% wrong answers. When encountering a problem, the fast system will give an answer immediately. This answer has not been carefully considered by the slow system, and the result is an error. This process is what we call irrational thinking. Kahneman summed up 9 common irrational thinking. We made a list of these 9 mistakes and put them in the manuscript. You can use it as a self-examination checklist. In thinking, will there be such mistakes? Attachment, irrational thinking self-examination checklist. Typicality bias, paying too much attention to typical events and ignoring the probabilities behind them. For example, if you see a person who reads a philosophy book on the subway, would you rather believe that he has a doctorate or a high school degree? In fact, there are far fewer PhDs than those with a high school degree. Availability bias, the more visible an event is, the more likely it is to happen. For example, the probability of an airplane crash is lower than that of a car accident, but because of news reports, people are more willing to believe that airplanes are less safe. Causal bias, forced causal interpretation of things. The law of small numbers, evaluate with very few samples. Utility cascading, when everyone is talking about one thing, we overestimate the importance of it. Halo effect, after people accept some information preconceivedly, the information will affect the overall judgment of things. For example, Xiao Ming is smart and lazy and Xiao Ming is lazy and smart, our impression of Xiao Ming will be different. Anchoring effect, before evaluating an unknown thing, even an irrelevant number will affect our judgment. Framing effect, different descriptions of the same problem will lead you to make completely different decision-making judgments. For example, repeatedly defeated and repeatedly defeated. Endowment effect, it means that when you own an item, you will feel that it is more valuable. Let's summarize the thinking mechanism of human beings to make judgments and decisions. Kahneman divided human thinking into two systems, the fast system and the slow system. The fast system is more inclined to use intuitive judgment, and the slow system is more inclined to use rational thinking. Everyone's thinking process is actually the result of the cooperation between the fast system and the slow system. Because the slow system takes up a lot of attention when it is working, and the living environment of early humans required higher speed, we have evolved a special thinking mechanism to keep the slow system on standby and hand over the work to the fast system handles it, and the fast system encounters trouble, and then the problem is handed over to the slow system to solve it. However, if the fast system runs too fast and encounters a problem and gives an answer before the slow system, the answer has not been carefully considered by the slow system, resulting in an error. This process is what we call irrational thinking. Kahneman gave us a reminder in the book, when we look at ourselves, it is often easier to see our own slow system. We think of ourselves as clear-headed, logical, good at making decisions, knowing what we want and what we should do. In fact, most of the time, it is the fast system that dominates our brains. Realize this, and you are actually a little more awake than others. The second part. After listening to the content just now, you may feel a little discouraged. The working mechanism of our brain, our evolution, determines that we are prone to irrational thinking when we think. Can we just accept this reality? Not really. In this book, Kahneman shares many ways to help us think. Next, let's take a look. Is there any way to improve the accuracy of our thinking? Some researchers did an experiment. They asked college students to take a cognitive response test. The questions on the questionnaire were similar. If 5 machines can produce 5 small parts in 5 minutes, how much does it take for 100 machines to produce 100 small parts? Long time? As a result, they found that 90% of the students would answer at least one question wrong if the font on the questionnaire was very clear. If the words on the questionnaire were written in small light gray characters that required careful reading to see clearly, the number of students who answered incorrectly dropped to 35%. Kahneman used this example to tell us a way to improve the accuracy of thinking. As we mentioned above, the main reason for irrational thinking is that the fast system quickly gives a wrong answer, which has not been carefully considered by the slow system. Therefore, an important way to improve the accuracy of thinking is to wake up the slow system. So, what are some ways to help us wake up the slow system in our brain? Kahneman gave many methods in the book, summed up in 2 directions, with the help of formulas and with the help of others. Let's first look at how to wake up the slow system with the help of formulas. Kahneman reminds us that when encountering a problem, a simple formula operation will have a much higher accuracy than subjective judgment. You may frown when you hear the formula operation. I know, all the complex tables, weights and coefficients flash in your mind. Don't worry, Kahneman also used his own research to give us a reassurance. Kahneman was commissioned by the Israeli military to develop a test system to evaluate the quality of soldiers. This evaluation system is not complicated, it consists of 6 indicators. The interviewer scores each indicator from 1 to 5 according to the soldier's performance, and the total score is the soldier's total score. This system doesn't have a lot of complicated indicators and different weights, but it works very well. Therefore, the formula calculation we are talking about does not have to be so complicated. Simply integrating some scores together is better than personal, subjective judgment. We can apply this method to our work and life to help ourselves improve the accuracy of our judgment. For example, recruiting. For example, you have 20 people's information in your hand, and you want to choose 3 people to meet. Picking by feeling is not the best way. You can design a simple evaluation system for yourself. You first choose a few factors that you think are the most important, such as education, work experience, and personality. Afterwards, each person is scored for these 3 items, and the total score is added together. You can choose the top 3 overall score on it. After talking about the formula, let's take a look at how to wake up the slow system with the help of others. As we mentioned earlier, when we look at ourselves, it is often easier to see our own slow system. We think of ourselves as clear-headed, logical, good at making decisions, knowing what we want and what we should do. In fact, most of the time, it is the fast system that dominates our brains. Even Kahneman himself will inevitably overestimate himself. Many years ago, when Kahneman was serving in the Israel Defense Forces, he planned to teach a high school judgment and decision-making course. He worked with others to design the syllabus and write the teaching materials. At that time, Kahneman gathered a group of people and formed a teaching material writing group. During the writing process, one day, Kahneman had a whim and said, "How about we predict how long it will take to complete this textbook?" As a result, some people said that it could be completed in 1.5 years, while others thought it would take 2.5 years. The values given by most people were within this range. Kahneman asked how long it took others to write similar textbooks. There happened to be one person in the group who had experience in writing textbooks before. He said that 40% of the writing team gave up in the end, and the remaining 60% completed it. It took a minimum of 7 years and a maximum of 10 years. According to this statistics, the probability of failure is 40%, and at least 7 years is a reasonable forecast for this project. However, members of the group did not understand and felt that it was not that difficult to write teaching materials, why a simple project took so long. You must know that at that time, it only took them 1 year to formulate a detailed teaching syllabus, write several chapters of the teaching materials, and even give a few demonstration lessons in the classroom. Everything went very smoothly. They feel that their team can finish a book in about 2 years. What was the outcome? It took them 8 years to complete the compilation of teaching materials. They knew the possible consequences of one thing in advance, but chose to ignore it. In the end, the book took too long to write, and the Ministry of Education's enthusiasm for the project faded, and the book was never put into use. Using today's concept, looking at yourself is an internal perspective, judging from the results of others is an external perspective. Introducing an external perspective can help us make accurate judgments. Take the matter of compiling textbooks as an example. Using an internal perspective, it is to use your own work progress at the beginning to predict the work progress in the future. But things often don't develop in a straight line at a fixed rate. It may be the most energetic at the beginning, but it is more likely that you will encounter extremely serious difficulties later. In fact, Kahneman's textbook writing team did start to have various difficulties later. Some people got divorced, some got sick, and they no longer worked as smoothly as they did at the beginning. And these difficult characteristics are both unexpected and reasonable. You can't think of it if you haven't done it, but basically everyone who has done it has encountered it. Because of this feature, it is better to ask others how to ask yourself. An external perspective can help us see key information that an internal perspective cannot. In addition, there is a psychological reason. People are very reluctant to question themselves when they are under pressure and in trouble. But it is easier to question others, so when we observe whether others have made mistakes, it is easier to identify minefields. Therefore, Kahneman reminds us to use the power of bystanders. These bystanders will use their slow thinking to help you correct mistakes that your fast thinking may have caused. Kahneman provided us with a method called prior autopsy. The scary-sounding name is actually a way to help us avoid overconfidence. The process of this trick is actually very simple. Before you want to make a major decision, you can invite a group of colleagues who understand the decision to hold a short meeting. The topic of the meeting is, assuming that this decision has been implemented for a year, but has encountered a huge failure, what is the most likely reason for failure? According to their own understanding, everyone writes down the possible reasons for the failure of this matter, and ranks them in order of importance and probability. In this way, we can plan ahead, prevent these factors and improve the success rate of work. Kahneman also suggested that before you make a decision, you can go to a more relaxed environment, such as the water cooler in the office, and listen to everyone's chats and criticisms. Of course, facing other people's doubts will also feel unpleasant, but it will still be much easier than doubting yourself. To sum up, when we recognize our irrational thinking, what methods can we use to improve the accuracy of our thinking? The core idea is to wake up the slow system in your brain. Kahneman gave us 2 directions in the book, with the help of formulas and with the help of others. When encountering a problem, a simple formula operation will have a much higher accuracy than subjective judgment. At the same time, because of our own characteristics, it is easy for us to overestimate ourselves, and it is difficult to accept doubts about ourselves, so it will be very difficult to start the slow system to evaluate ourselves. At this time, we can use others, introduce external perspectives, and use other people's slow systems to help us check our own decisions. In addition, Kahneman also has a small reminder, that is, our own physical condition will also affect the accuracy of our decision-making. Studies have found that when your blood sugar levels drop, or in other words, when you're particularly tired, your self-control becomes worse. You will make those particularly hasty and risky decisions at this time. So when you are very tired, you really need to take a break, go for a 5-minute walk, or take a few deep breaths, which can actually improve your thinking level. At this point, the interpretation of thinking, fast and slow, is over. We first answered a question: how do we make judgments and decisions? In our brain, both the fast system and the slow system are running at the same time. Usually, the slow system is often in a standby state. When the fast system encounters difficulties, the slow system will come out to solve the problem. But if the fast system runs too fast and encounters a problem, it will give an answer immediately before the slow system. This answer has not been carefully considered by the slow system, and an error will result. This process is what we call irrational thinking. After we recognize our irrational thinking, is there any way to improve the accuracy of our thinking? Kahneman gave us 2 directions in the book, with the help of formulas and with the help of others. The core idea of these 2 directions is to wake up the slow system in your brain. After listening to these contents, you may have a stereotype of the fast system, thinking that it is reckless and error-prone, and it seems to be a disservice in many cases. In fact, there is no favoritism between fast systems and slow systems. It is true that the fast system is the reason we make many bad decisions, but it is also the reason we make many good decisions. This system has operated for millions of years, protecting our ancestors from surviving and reproducing in various challenging environments. To this day, at critical moments, the quick decision of the fast system also helps people in many cases. For example, well-trained soldiers, firefighters, athletes, they all know how to use their fast system. And there is no clear distinction between fast and slow systems. Research shows that as you become more proficient at performing a task, the effort required decreases. Studies of the brain have also shown that patterns of activity associated with locomotion change with increasing proficiency, and some brain regions are no longer involved. In other words, through deliberate practice, we can turn the work of the slow system into the work of the fast system, and turn those tasks that require a lot of attention into natural intuition and instinct. This is what it means to learn and practice, and it builds a bridge between the fast system and the slow system. Therefore, the most ideal state is that we understand the fast system, delve into the slow system, and master a method of overall planning, knowing when to trust the fast system and when to start the slow system. It is first-class wisdom to be able to do a job well and be comfortable between fast and slow thinking. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.